Life alone can feel overwhelming at times, especially when surrounded by clutter. Spaces that once brought comfort can now feel chaotic, adding stress to daily routines. Meet Margaret, a vibrant 72-year-old who struggled with piles of belongings collected over decades. She felt stuck, unsure how to begin organizing her home. But Margaret discovered small, manageable steps that made a big difference. Today, she enjoys a safer, simpler space. Let's explore how her journey can inspire you to reclaim your home and peace of mind. Fun? Facing the clutter can creep up on anyone, but for Margaret, it felt like an overwhelming weight. Her small living room, once filled with memories, had become a maze of items she didn't use but couldn't part with. It wasn't that she didn't want to tidy up. She just didn't know where to begin. Margaret decided to start with a single drawer in her kitchen, something small enough to manage in one sitting. She pulled everything out, sorting through old utensils, papers, and trinkets she hadn't touched in years. She created 3 piles, one to keep, one to donate, and one to toss. It wasn't easy at first. Letting go of a chipped teacup her friend once gifted her felt like saying goodbye all over again. By focusing on one small area, Margaret found a sense of accomplishment. Tackling a small drawer gave her confidence, and soon she moved on to another space. Starting with a single spot and working gradually is a simple yet effective way to overcome the paralysis of clutter. One drawer might not seem like much, but the joy of seeing it neat and organized can spark motivation to keep going. 2. Creating a vision for space. Margaret often felt stuck because she didn't know what her home could look like. She kept the clutter because, deep down, she couldn't imagine her space any differently. One day, she stumbled upon a picture of a serene, organized living room in a magazine. The sight of the clear surfaces and cozy atmosphere inspired her. Margaret decided to imagine her ideal living space, a place where she could sit comfortably with a book, free from tripping over piles of belongings. Visualizing the result helped her focus on what she wanted to achieve. She even stuck the magazine picture on her fridge as a reminder of her goal. Creating a vision can provide clarity and motivation. Think about how you want your home to feel: calm, inviting, and safe. Find an image that reflects your goal, whether it's from a magazine, website, or even your own memories. When you're tempted to keep something you don't need, remember your vision. It's easier to let go when you're working towards something positive. 3. Safety. First, eliminating hazards. For Margaret, safety had never been a priority when it came to her belongings. But one evening, she tripped over a box of old books she'd been meaning to organize. The fall was a wake-up call. It was time to clear pathways in her home to prevent accidents. She began by identifying the biggest hazards: stacks of papers by the couch, unused decorations in the hallway, and shoes scattered near the door. Margaret cleared these areas first, ensuring that her walkways were open and easy to navigate. She also moved heavier items off high shelves to prevent the risk of falling objects. If clutter poses a safety risk in your home, start by focusing on the areas you walk through most often. Remove anything that could cause a fall, like loose rugs or piles of belongings. Think about your future self. Each step you take to make your home safer is a gift to your independence and peace of mind. After clearing her pathways, Margaret felt a sense of relief. Her home didn't just look better, it felt better too. Margaret's first steps may seem small, but they had a ripple effect on her life. Tackling clutter one drawer at a time, imagining a calm and inviting space, and prioritizing safety gave her the confidence to keep going. Each step, though simple, brought her closer to a home that felt like a sanctuary. Now that she had built momentum, Margaret was ready to tackle even bigger challenges, knowing she had the tools and determination to succeed. 4. Sorting made simple. Margaret stood in front of her cluttered closet, feeling overwhelmed. She tried organizing before, but it always felt like she was moving items from one place to another. This time, she tried something different. She committed to sorting everything into 3 categories: keep, donate, and discard. At first, it was difficult. Margaret picked up an old scarf she hadn't worn in years, but still hesitated to let it go. To make it easier, she asked herself, "Do I truly need this? Does it serve me today?" With each item, she grew more decisive. The sorting process became less daunting once she set clear goals for each category. Using labeled bins, she placed her keeps in one, her donations in another, and her discards in a trash bag. The act of seeing her progress helped her push through. By breaking the task into manageable steps and focusing on small wins, Margaret felt empowered. Each item she sorted brought her closer to a space that reflected her current life, not her past. 5. Handling sentimental items. Margaret found her greatest challenge when it came to sentimental belongings. Her shelves were lined with items tied to memories: her late husband's favorite mug, her children's childhood drawings, and gifts from old friends. Every object told a story, and letting go felt like erasing those moments. One day, Margaret came across a box of her daughter's school projects. She smiled as she flipped through them, but realized she didn't need to keep every single piece. Instead, she decided to photograph the items. By preserving the memories digitally, she could revisit them whenever she wanted without keeping the physical clutter. For items she couldn't part with, Margaret created a small memory box. She chose a few of her most meaningful keepsakes and tucked them into the box, knowing they deserved a special place. This allowed her to honor her memories without feeling weighed down by too many things. Letting go wasn't easy, but it became a chance to focus on the memories that mattered most. 6. Enlisting allies. Decluttering alone can be daunting, but Margaret learned that she didn't have to do it by herself. When her neighbor, Carol, offered to help, Margaret hesitated at first. She felt embarrassed about the state of her home and worried about judgment. But Carol reassured her, saying, "We've all been there. Sometimes it's easier to sort through things with a friend." Having someone by her side made the process more enjoyable. They chatted, laughed, and reminisced as they sorted through Margaret's belongings. Carol also provided a fresh perspective, gently reminding Margaret when she was holding on to things she didn't need. If decluttering feels overwhelming, consider asking a friend or family member for help. Having someone there can lighten the emotional load and turn a tedious task into a bonding experience. After their decluttering session, Margaret felt lighter, not just because her home was clearer, but because she realized she didn't have to navigate this journey alone. Margaret's experience showed her that decluttering wasn't just about clearing her space. It was about reclaiming control over her life. By sorting through her belongings with intention, finding creative ways to honor memories, and leaning on the support of others, she took meaningful steps toward a simpler, more peaceful home. With each success, she grew more confident in her ability to face the challenges ahead. 7. Building a decluttering routine. Margaret had a tendency to dive into big projects all at once, only to burn out and leave things unfinished. She'd start sorting her closet, but stop halfway, frustrated and exhausted. This time, she decided to take a different approach, one rooted in consistency rather than intensity. She set aside just 15 minutes each day to declutter. It felt manageable, even on days when her energy was low. Margaret started with one small task at a time, like clearing a corner of her bedroom or going through a single stack of papers. Setting a timer kept her on track and prevented the task from becoming overwhelming. Within a week, Margaret noticed real progress. The small daily efforts added up, and her home slowly began to transform. By pacing herself, she stayed motivated and avoided the exhaustion that came from trying to do everything at once. Decluttering, she realized, didn't have to feel like an endless chore. It could become a habit, one that fits seamlessly into her routine. 8. Eco-friendly decluttering. Margaret often hesitated to throw things away because she didn't want to contribute to waste. The thought of filling up garbage bags with items she no longer needed made her uneasy. But when she learned about eco-friendly ways to declutter, she found a solution that aligned with her values. She began by donating gently used clothing and household items to local charities. The idea that someone else could use what she no longer needed gave her a sense of purpose. Margaret also discovered community recycling programs that accepted items like electronics and old books. She even joined a neighborhood swap group where people traded items they no longer used. By decluttering responsibly, Margaret felt better about letting go. She wasn't just clearing her home. She was contributing to a cycle of reuse and sustainability. For seniors like Margaret, knowing that their belongings can find a new life elsewhere can make the process of decluttering more meaningful and satisfying. 9. The clever Margaret always struggled with her wardrobe. Her closet was packed with clothes, many of which she hadn't worn in years. Each time she tried to declutter, she'd convince herself she might wear something someday. It wasn't until she discovered a clever trick that she finally made progress. She decided to use the reverse hanger trick. At the start of the season, she turned all her hangers backward. Each time she wore an item, she flipped the hanger back to its normal position. After 6 months, it was easy to see which clothes she hadn't touched. Those unworn items went straight into her donation pile. This method took the guesswork out of decluttering. Margaret no longer had to agonize over decisions. She let her habits do the talking. As she cleared space in her closet, she felt lighter. It wasn't just about the clothes. It was about making room for the life she was living now, rather than holding on to things that no longer served her. With her newfound momentum, Margaret realized that decluttering was more than just tidying up. It was a form of self-care. By creating a routine, embracing sustainable practices, and using clever tricks like the reverse hanger method, she was transforming her space in ways she never thought possible. Each small victory built on the last, reinforcing her confidence and showing her that even the biggest challenges could be tackled one step at a time. 10. Rediscovering joy through minimalism. Margaret often felt weighed down by the sheer volume of items in her home. While she didn't consider herself a minimalist, she realized that holding on to so much was draining her emotionally and physically. One day, she came across a dusty vase sitting in her living room, a vase she hadn't noticed or used in years. She asked herself, "Does this bring me joy?" The answer was no. With that simple question as her guide, Margaret began to focus on what truly made her happy. She kept the books she loved to read, her favorite cozy blanket, and the artwork that brought her peace. The rest, items she hadn't touched or enjoyed in years, went to donation centers or friends who could appreciate them. Each time Margaret let go of something unnecessary, she felt lighter. Her home started to feel more like a reflection of her current self, not a collection of past moments. Simplifying her space didn't just make her home more comfortable, it brought her a renewed sense of joy and clarity. 11. Repurposing space. As Margaret cleared away clutter, she began to notice how much space she had freed up. Her spare room, once overflowing with boxes and unused furniture, now had the potential to serve a new purpose. She had always loved painting, but hadn't picked up a brush in years. With her decluttered room, she decided to create a small art corner. She started by rearranging the furniture she had kept, setting up a small table and a comfortable chair. Margaret brought out her old paints and brushes, organizing them neatly on shelves. The space quickly transformed into her creative sanctuary, a place where she could relax and enjoy a hobby that had always brought her peace. For anyone clearing out their home, think about how you might repurpose your newly decluttered spaces, whether it's creating a cozy reading nook, a crafting area, or simply a quiet spot to unwind. Making a space purposeful adds to its value. Margaret's new art corner became her favorite place in the house, reminding her that decluttering wasn't just about getting rid of things. It was about making room for what truly mattered. 12. Staying connected. One of Margaret's biggest struggles was loneliness, a feeling that often crept in after a long day. Decluttering, surprisingly, helped her build connections with others. When she came across items she no longer needed but knew someone else might appreciate, she reached out to her friends and neighbors. One evening, Margaret discovered a set of dishes she hadn't used in years. Instead of packing them away or donating them to a charity, she called her neighbor, who had recently mentioned needing new plates. Her neighbor was thrilled to take them, and the exchange turned into a lovely chat over tea. It wasn't just about the dishes. It was about creating moments of connection through the process of letting go. Margaret also joined a local community group where people shared or traded items they no longer needed. She met others going through similar decluttering journeys, which made her feel less alone. For seniors, finding ways to connect with others, whether through sharing items, joining a group, or even talking about the experience, can transform decluttering into an opportunity for deeper relationships. Margaret's small acts of generosity reminded her of the value of community and the joy of giving, which helped her see decluttering in a whole new light. Margaret's journey continued to unfold as she rediscovered herself through the process of clearing out her home. By focusing on joy, repurposing spaces, and building connections with others, she not only transformed her home, but also her sense of purpose and belonging. Every step brought her closer to a life that felt simpler, happier, and more fulfilling. 13. Reflecting on progress. Margaret stood in her living room, now free of the piles and clutter that had once taken over her space. For the first time in years, she could see the surfaces of her tables and walk freely through the room without obstacles. It wasn't just her home that had changed. Margaret felt lighter, too. She never thought she could make it this far, but seeing her progress gave her a deep sense of accomplishment. She took a moment to reflect on how far she had come. To remind herself of the transformation, she looked at the before pictures she had taken at the start of her journey. The difference was incredible, and it made her realize just how much she had achieved, one small step at a time. Taking photos or jotting down notes about your progress can be a great motivator. Seeing how much you've accomplished reinforces the value of your hard work and keeps you inspired. Margaret's journey reminded her that even the smallest steps could lead to significant, visible changes. The clutter was gone, but what remained was a home that felt calm, inviting, and entirely her own. 14. Maintaining the momentum. With her home now decluttered, Margaret wondered how she could keep it that way. She didn't want to slip back into old habits, but she knew staying clutter-free required ongoing effort. To make things easier, she adopted a few simple strategies to maintain her space. One of the rules Margaret followed was the one in, one out rule. Whenever she brought something new into her home, she let go of something she no longer needed. For example, if she bought a new sweater, she donated an old one. This approach helped her prevent clutter from building up again. Margaret also developed a habit of doing quick, daily tidies. Before going to bed each night, she spent 5 minutes putting things back where they belonged. By staying consistent with small efforts, she avoided the overwhelming task of tackling clutter all at once. Maintaining a decluttered home doesn't have to feel like a chore. Small daily habits can make a big difference, keeping your space organized and your mind at ease. Margaret found that these simple practices became second nature, allowing her to enjoy her home without worrying about clutter creeping back in. 15. Sharing the elixir. As Margaret reflected on her journey, she felt proud not only of the changes she had made in her own home, but also of the lessons she had learned along the way. She realized that her experience could inspire others who were struggling with similar challenges. One day, Margaret invited a group of friends over for tea. As they admired her beautifully organized home, she shared her story, how she had started small, worked steadily, and found joy in the process. Her friends were inspired, and some even asked for tips on how to begin their own decluttering journeys. Margaret also decided to share her story with her local community group. She talked about the practical methods she used, like sorting items into categories and creating a vision for her space. But she also emphasized the emotional benefits she had gained. Letting go of clutter had given her a new sense of freedom and confidence, and she wanted others to experience that too. By sharing her journey, Margaret found a new purpose. Helping others gave her a sense of fulfillment, and seeing her friends and neighbors take their first steps toward decluttering brought her immense joy. Her journey had come full circle. What started as a personal challenge became an opportunity to connect, inspire, and uplift others. Margaret's transformation didn't just change her home, it changed her life. Reflecting on her progress, maintaining her momentum, and sharing her experiences with others allowed her to turn decluttering into something far greater than clearing her space. It became a path to self-discovery, connection, and joy. Her story is a reminder that no matter where you start, small steps can lead to big, lasting changes. Margaret's journey shows that with small, intentional steps, you can transform your home and your life. From clearing clutter to creating a space filled with purpose and joy, she reclaimed her independence and found renewed confidence. Now it's your turn. Start small, believe in your progress, and take the first step today. Together, let's create a home and life that reflect your strength and resilience. Your journey begins now. What will your first step be?